this afternoon for purposes of a review hearing and a primacy planning hearing. May I have the names of our participants, please?
Lee Heiss, lawyer, guardian ad litem.
Ms. Stasia Thomas, counsel for the department. Ms. Moore.
Macy Moore, M-O-O-R-E, foster care worker with Catholic Charities.
Mr. McFarland, representing mother.
Do we have Ms. Cheyenne Denias with us today? I don't have her on Zoom either, just so you know. Mr. McFarland, have you heard from your client?
I have not, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Brooks
I would have a motion at the appropriate time, Your Honor.
All right, one moment. Mr. Brooks is excused for today. The court has reviewed the some of the anticipated documents to discover that Mr. Jacob Bliss was ruled out as a biological father, and he had been asked to assist Mr. Bliss, so Mr. Brooks is not here. And he's excused. Would you like to address your motion then, Mr. McFarland?
I do, Your Honor. Without a client, I really do not know what her position would be. I could not be effective counsel, so I'm asking just for today's date, I be excused.
This is the second time it would appear she was not here in January either for that review. Any objections?
No.
No, Your Honor.
All right. All right. Thank you for appearing, Mr. McFarland. You are excused.
Thank you.
I should note also today is a pretrial to review those DNA results, and we have some results on that point, but I'll look forward to that as part of the presentation of proofs. Ms. Heiss, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. I had the honor of visiting with this child again. He is so fortunate to have this extended family. They have a relationship with the person who is determined scientifically to be the biological father of this child. Therefore, I withdraw my objection to Mr. Bliss being relieved of the status of legal father to this child. All the child's needs are being met in the current placement. He's doing well in school. And I would suggest he still isn't seeing his mother, of course, because of the bond conditions, etc. And I would ask you to consider leaving that status quo until mother has been able to do more services and benefit from them. Thank you.
Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Can please be sworn in?
Sure. I'm not sure where to stand. In the meantime, Ms. Thomas, your microphone is like the quieter version of what we normally have for you. So I don't know if you can play with that or not.
Yep. Ms. Moore, you are the foster care worker on this case, correct?
Correct.
And you provided a court report for today's hearing?
I did.
One of the things that I don't have in the report itself are the DNA results. Can you remind me if that was circulated beforehand?
It was circulated beforehand. It was sent out on 2/15 of 2024.
Are there any other documents that you have filed or circulated between the last hearing and today's hearing?
No, just the DNA results.
Thank you for that. And as it relates to your court report and those attachments, are there any updates or modifications that you are aware of that need to be made?
I have just a couple. I was able to see Xavier in the home last Friday. That visit went overall pretty well. We did have a little slip up. He had an accident, but he came right up to us, said, I had an accident, and it was no thing, didn't have any behaviors or anything after that. So that was really exciting to see. The family always does amazing with Xavier. That's never anything that I ever question. As for, one more update on Xavier. All CTAC recommendations that were in the report have been either completed or scheduled by the family, such as like the eye appointment, OT, and they do psychoeducation with Pam as well. And then an update for Cheyenne. I did talk to her yesterday and she was aware of this hearing. I had given her the date, time, everything like that. Yesterday, roughly 1 o'clock, and she had said she was going to be here in person and she doesn't like to join by Zoom. And then the other update that I have for Cheyenne, Lisa Holdridge, the therapist I referred her to, just got back to me, and she is unable to accept the case because she has a conflict because she works with Pam, so she has the child's case as well. So she had suggested referring her over to the substance abuse disorder counseling that we have through Catholic Charities. And if that doesn't work, I am working on a different referral to that. I don't remember the exact place, but it was the one in Jackson that she previously had an appointment for, didn't show up, and then never rescheduled.
Thank you for all of those updates. And as it relates to your court report, how would you generally describe mom's level of compliance with and benefit from her case service during this review period?
I would say it was minimal. She was able to get her psychological done, and she has been participating with drug screens consistently throughout. However, every drug screen has still been positive for marijuana.
Okay, hang on, because I think Ms. Denies has joined us. Are you Cheyenne Denies?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's okay. Do you want to come on up here and have a seat at the table? We've begun your review.
Okay.
Terry is here as well.
Thank you. Welcome. Glad to see you.
Yeah, he's done, so.
Thank you. All right. Deputy Ames, if you could reach out to Mr. McFarland and let him know if he could log back in, we'd appreciate it.
I will, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right. Carry on.
Actually, Your Honor, I was going to ask before we started if any of the interpreters that we had last hearing, if they were present at all. I know that we asked them to be, but I don't know if what happened.
I have a Bonnie McGee.
I think that's for 2:30.
Thought so, but I couldn't check. I do not have anybody other than Bonnie McGee. Okay. Ms. Moore, as it relates to your testimony, you had stated that there had been minimal compliance during this review. She was able to be psychological and was consistent with drug screens. Is there anything else that you would like to report on?
No, but I would say that the most things that I would like her to focus on the most would be getting your substance abuse assessment, the psychiatric assessment, and then getting in therapy. I know that has had some troubled waters, but we are figuring that out as we move ahead.
Based on mom's psychological evaluation and the child's trauma assessment, are there any specialized parenting classes or parenting education that has been referred out?
There has not been, besides that psycho education that they do with Pam, but that is the placements family. It has not been done with Cheyenne.
Where would you expect mom to receive some parenting ed services from?
She has been referred to parenting education through Lifeways in Jackson.
And has she completed that?
No.
Has she participated in it though?
Not that I'm aware of.
And typically marijuana is not used against parents as it is a legal substance. Given the statements in the psychological evaluation, is that why you're recommending substance abuse treatment for mom?
Well, previously there has been a positive test for cocaine as well. However, in her psychological, it was recommended that she stop the use of marijuana and that the use of marijuana be addressed.
And the psychological evaluation also kind of indicated that it was also related to mom's coping strategies and the sort of high anxiety and those sorts of things that really interfere with parenting. Is that the best of your recollection?
Yes, that would be the best of my recollection.
And then as it relates to paternity, the DNA test indicates Mr. Bliss is not the biological father. Mr. Terry Donnelly is that correct?
That's correct.
And have you had any conversations with Mr. Donnelly about his involvement?
We have not gone into detail. I had informed him that he is the father, and I informed him of the DNA test results. But beyond that, we have not discussed too much.
And are you aware if he's establishing any type of relationship with the child?
He has only met the child once, so there is not that relationship built up.
As it relates to the permanency planning portion of this hearing, the current goal is still reunification, correct?
Correct.
And let's just say, for argument's sake, paternity was not an issue in this matter, or let's disregard the paternity matter. Do you have a recommendation as it relates to the child's permanency with mother, whether that should continue to be reunification or if it needs to change?
I believe that it would need to change. I don't think there has been substantial progress throughout this case yet far. This case has been open since October, so we've already got 6 months into this, and the progress just started this reporting period within the last month or so.
Is there a reason why guardianship may not be appropriate for this family?
I believe that the child is severely traumatized. He faces a lot of uphill battles potentially in his future, dealing with the trauma and moving forward, learning how to cope with everything. So I don't believe that that would be best, because I feel like it's kind of, it's not a solid like line, like I don't have to go back. It's kind of gives a still a worry feeling in the child's stomach and things like that, I would imagine.
Thank you. And as it relates to the risk of harm to the child if returned to mother, for argument's sake, again, there's no contact right now, but if the court were to return the child to mother today, what would that risk of harm be?
I believe the risk of harm would be potential parental substance use, physical and mental abuse, as well as possible mental health issues relating to medications and just anger management in general.
And does she have sort of those basic needs established, like housing and transportation, employment, and those things?
She does have employment. She is currently living with her aunt, and I have not been able to go out to the house to see that because she does not want me to do so, and her aunt does not want me to do so. And then could you say the other things that you said again? Sorry.
And then transportation? Transportation.
She does have a car. And right now, off the top of my head, I cannot remember if I have been provided with legal insurance or not. But I do know that has been an issue in the past.
Okay. And as it relates to any other component of this case, is there anything you'd like to highlight for the court's attention?
I do not have anything to highlight, but I believe Pam Millenbach would like to highlight some things related to the child's trauma.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions of Ms. Moore and would move to admit the court report with its attachments, including the DNA test results that were submitted in February.
No objection.
Well, at this point, I think I was hoping that Mr. McFarland would have rejoined us by now, but we don't have him quite yet.
No word yet, Your Honor.
Okay. So I think we're going to have to take a recess for a few minutes to see if we can't re-engage with him on behalf of Ms. Denias. So we appreciate your patience. I just want to say thank you to Ms. Dumont on record. She has stepped in for our Mr. McFarland this afternoon and talked with Ms. Cheyenne Denias. We went through some questioning of our caseworker on the record already. Ms. Moore, would you mind stepping back to the witness stand for a moment? Thank you.
Do I need to be sworn back in?
You remain on the record.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so if you have any questions about the court report or anything else that you wanted to go over with our caseworker, now's the opportunity.
Ms. Moore, I apologize, I don't know what you testified to previously. Are you currently aware that Ms. Denias is doing parenting classes weekly? I am not aware, no. Okay. So just for the record, she is doing parenting classes once a week on Thursdays for 2 hours. Would she be able to get me verification of that? Yes. And that she is also currently drug testing weekly? Correct. For colors? Yeah. Okay. And there's not been anything in her system other than marijuana since November? Correct. However, the marijuana usage should be corrected because it says so in her psychological to address the marijuana usage. So that still counts even though it is legal. Okay. So are you recommending some sort of substance abuse? Correct. Okay. Are you aware that Ms. Denias is in the process of finding a therapist per your recommendation? I am not aware. I am aware that I have made referrals, and those have kind of fallen through. I did testify earlier that they fell through. We referred her to kind of a substance abuse disorder abuse through Catholic Charities. They should have reached out to her yesterday. However, if that falls through, then I will move forward with the one that she was previous. She scheduled it herself and then didn't go to the appointment. I could go through them again. Okay. Were you aware that she was having some trouble finding a therapist, I think? Did you recommend through Lifeways? No, I did not. Okay. Just due to issues with her insurance? I was not aware of that. I made the referral through our agency, so insurance should not have affected the referral I made. Okay. I don't know if she made that outside of my referral, though. Okay. And your referral was through Catholic Charities? Correct. She's indicated she didn't hear from them yesterday, but if they follow through, she'll follow up. Perfect. Yeah. Are you aware that she's currently employed? I am aware, but I have gotten verification for the news group out in Jackson. I have not gotten any verification for the second job at Taco Bell. Okay. She indicated she did start Friday, okay, so she can provide you with documentation of that. And then are you aware or able to help her with finding some stable housing? I've given her housing referrals already. Okay. And then are you aware she's working on getting her GED? I am aware, but the last time we had discussed it, she told me that she doesn't do it. So, okay. Okay. So what are you wanting to see from Ms. Denias from this court date to the next court date to be able to try and hopefully get some supervised visitations? Or the main things that I'd like her to focus on, I guess I could kind of put them in order, most important first to last. Therapy is a big one, but I previously testified that I know that I'm part of the issue on that, and referrals just getting messed up. So that is something that I am continuing to try to work out for her. Psychiatric assessment is pretty important. Substance abuse assessment is important. Job verification for the Taco Bell, proof of insurance on the vehicle, anger management that could be tied in with therapy. However, parenting education. I would like to have a home visit with her, but I understand that her and her aunt do not want that while she is living with her aunt. And those are the main key ones. Okay. And are you requesting that she give you proof of insurance for her vehicle? Correct. Okay. Since she's obtained that. So with regards to she's trying to get into the therapy and then she's already doing the parenting classes, you would just like verification of everything? Correct. Okay. And then I believe, are you indicating another psychological evaluation? No, I'm indicating a psychiatric evaluation. And then follow the recommendations. Correct. I don't have anything further.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Heiss, did you have any questions?
Just briefly. Ms. Moore, mother has been provided the CTAC evaluation and Pam Millenbach's notes and all those?
I believe so.
Are you the one that gave them to her?
I did not give it to her in person. I believe it would have been over email, but yes.
Okay. And then, so do you know if she's followed through with any of the recommendations on either the CTAC, the psychological evaluation, or Ms. Millenbach's notes?
For Ms. Denias?
Yes.
I do not know if she has followed through with any of those, no.
Have you talked to her about whether she accepts responsibility for the things that the child is disclosing?
I have not talked to her directly, but based through reports and everything like that, I think it is minimized. I can refer you to page 3 and 4 of her psychological, and that says, from my interpretation of the report, that she does not believe this to affect Xavier that much.
Okay. With respect to the placement home, would you say they're following prudent parent standards?
Absolutely.
They're providing normalcy for the child? Correct.
They make that little boy, they are amazing for him. I can't emphasize that enough.
For holiday traditions and vacations and all kinds of things, birthday parties and that kind of thing they're having, correct?
Correct.
Because we have this new information about a biological father and that father has hearing impairment, has this child been checked for hearing impairment?
I do not believe so, but I don't think it is a concern. I think that might have been addressed in his CTAC if it was a concern, because they listed off like getting an eye appointment and stuff like that. So I don't believe that to be the case.
Thank you. That concludes my questions.
Any redirect?
I have none, Your Honor.
Did you have any questions based on Ms. Heiss' questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you for your testimony. We return to your seat. Okay, Ms. Thomas, your next witness.
I don't have another witness, Your Honor, but I would just like to revisit whether the court report and DNA testing and all the attachments were received by the court.
I do have that, yes. So there was another question also, Ms. Dumont. Ms. Thomas requested that the court report and the exhibits be made part of the record. Do you have any objections to that?
No objection.
Very good. Ms. Heiss, I think you already told me, but.
No objection.
Thank you. All right. The report, the exhibits, and the DNA testing are now part of the court's file. Is there anything from your client today or any other witnesses you'd like us to hear from?
No, Your Honor, she indicated she does not want to testify.
Very well. Ms. Heiss.
Your Honor, is Ms. Millenbach there?
She
present?
is.
Okay, may I briefly ask for an update from her as a witness?
Absolutely.
Ms. Millenbach, you're employed by Catholic Charities, is that true?
Yes.
And will you tell us your title?
I'm a therapist working principally with our foster care program.
Last time you testified, you kind of did a narrative. Would you be willing to give us an update about this child's progress and whether you've seen the CTAC evaluation?
Yes, I would. I'd be happy to do that. I presented quite a lengthy narrative on complex trauma and how we were seeing the symptoms of that in Xavier. Since that report that was written several months ago, he has related further allegations to me, which I could repeat at this moment, would be that he has said that what typically happens with him, and the best way to describe this would be during our sessions, which are once a week in the home, they usually last for about 2 hours. They consist of sometimes individually, sometimes with the family. There's a family therapy session. He will talk about what he has already talked about, and he will address it over and over and over. this is initial trauma therapy that we're looking at. So he's at the point, he now knows how to use his words, and we're constantly talking to him about use your words instead of going into these major temper tantrums that I described the last time. So he basically, I won't repeat the things he's already made allegations about, but what I've learned since then, he's talked about being kicked in the stomach by his mother, being hit further, which he'd already said. And he has this tendency to demonstrate how he was hit or how he was kicked. He would, and I showed you that, how he was pulled up by his neck and all of that I talked about the last time. He's also mentioned, this was new to me, that at the point, that 8-week time last summer when he was living with his mother and her boyfriend, who he names as Paul, that Paul used to hit him and kick him in the stomach also. And that Paul had a son who, it sounds like from what he's told me that he must have been an adolescent son, who also would hit him. The other new allegations was that he was put in a dog cage for defecating in his pants. And also he talked about being dragged by his wrists across the floor. Those are the new things. What are we doing with him? Tantrums. Do you mind if I look at, is it okay if I just look at these records so I can do this faster without having to think about it?
Any objections? No.
Okay.
No.
And I can do I spent a long time talking. I don't know that you have all that time to do that. But one of the things that we're doing with him is making sure that he realizes that he is in a safe environment. And secondly, that anything that happened, especially during those 8 weeks, was not his fault. He refers to himself as being bad. He refers to himself as being evil. Where this is coming from is hard to determine. We have found out from the school that there is a boy in the school who, in his preschool, who also acts out, and we find that he will come back from school and imitate some of those behaviors. But as far as the language, I don't know where he's getting this bad and this evil. It's just not really clear. But he has, when he defecates in his pants, he refers to himself as being bad. He apologizes for being bad. And this is a very significant issue for a little 5-year-old because it happens quite often. The pediatrician has actually stated that this is probably due to, and happened at the time of his initial potty training and toilet training, that he was being shamed, is the word that he had used, that it wasn't done correctly. Now, using his words has made a huge difference with him. He's gone into prolonged tantrums. I was able to see a very prolonged one that lasted over an hour about 2 weeks ago. And it was due to his need for control. He wanted to play. I had said to him, before we play with the toys, we have some work to do. And that is the trauma work that we're doing. And he will pull back and do that. And I'll say to him, once we finish doing this, then we can go into playtime. And so in this particular occasion, he just decided he wanted to play right away. And I said, no, we've got to do this. And he immediately went into one of his temper tantrums, which I described the intensity of it. And it lasted for a good 45 minutes, I would say, back and forth. He would come out of it, and as soon as he came out of it, he thought, now I'm going to be able to play again. I'm going to be able to play. The minute I said, no, we're not going to play. We have our work to do first. And he would go back into it. Then last week, we entered into I worked with him alone for an hour. Then we started to do family therapy where we all joined together. And he got upset. I can't even remember what he was upset about, but it was something. And he screamed. It was a rage that was coming out of him. So I saw, I've heard the grandparents describe this, and And right away, what we've been working on, decreasing the intensity and the length of his temper tantrums. And these have been identified as behaviors that began upon his return home from those 8 weeks that he spent with his mother. So there are a lot of concerns about what happened during those 8 weeks, and he's telling them, he's talking about them. I just told you the couple of new things that he's related. He's gone through a period of telling everybody what his mom did to him. The other people that come to the house, he'll tell them. Friends, other family members, he'll tell them what happened to them. So, which is good, and it's also concerning, because with trauma therapy, you want kids to be able to tell their story, relate their narrative, whether it's in words, in which now he has that ability to express it, whether it's by singing it, or dancing it, drawing it, doing some type of play therapy activity to deal with that. Because basically, his brain needs to be rewired. He has complex, severe complex trauma. His brain is, at this point, are we seeing improvement? Yes, we are. We're seeing a difference, but it's going to be a long, slow process. And what we're always told with all the research on trauma, once a child enters into that therapy, usually their behavior will get worse before it gets better. And he's at that period right now. He's lashing out a lot at his grandma like he never did before. But he needs, it's explained in the CTAC assessment, where it talks about his need for control and how he's left powerless. And he's trying to do that now with his grandma. But he is snapping out of it really fast. We're finding he's not, we're seeing less and less major tantrums than he had before. And the intensity of them is, they're not as severe. He's able to come out of that much quicker. So all this is positive, but it's going to be a long time. Ms. Millenbach? Yes.
Have you had a chance to review the mother's psychological evaluation?
No, I haven't. I don't have access to that unless she okays that for me to be able to read it.
Okay. When you're at the home, would you agree with the CTAC that he's very securely bonded with his grandmother and grandfather?
100%, yes.
And that the home is clean and appropriate for this child?
Absolutely.
He has toys and snacks and treats, all appropriate?
Yes.
Would you be someone that could help him to come to understand if he has understand the new information about his paternity?
I am very, very hesitant to proceed with that at this point. I addressed that in the report. Particularly, I put a couple of paragraphs in there regarding attachment. This child is very attached to his grandparents. And it's critical that attachment not be in any way disturbed for his ongoing development. It's addressed in the CTAC. Actually, I don't know if this is appropriate to do in a courtroom, but I brought one of the best book that anybody could ever read on trauma. It's by Bessel van der Kolk. It's called The Body Keeps the Score.
I've read it.
Okay. I mean, this is like 2015. If you want to understand attachment, trauma, get this book. It's the best.
Very good.
I was going to say, I also brought just a packet with 3 articles that describe attachment theory. I know you don't want me to talk about it because I've taught at the college level, so I know I've taught trauma. So I could go on and on and on. I've taught attachment. It's I brought one on bonding and attachment in maltreated children. I brought one in on, it's called I See the Violence. Children who experience early childhood trauma do not just get over it. Wonderful 2-page article. I tried to pick the best things that would help people here to understand this, anybody in this courtroom really. And understand, this is a little more complicated, understanding the effects of maltreatment on brain development. And I will put out some packets. Is that okay to do in your courtroom?
If you just want to hold on to them, and then anybody who wants to chat with you about it afterwards, I'm sure would be able to talk with you, if that's all right.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to be of help in any way I can. I think it's very important that we understand this, particularly at this point, with this whole idea of attachment for this little boy. He's very, very attached, and to me, any way that we would, we have to be very careful with him, because you get 2 different responses to children that I'm aware of. And I know in the last hearing, Your Honor, you had asked me about how would this be detrimental to Xavier to even start up visits. And wow, I mean, I could, it would be highly detrimental. That's my answer. It's in these articles. It's in these, particularly this article on attachment.
Thank you, Ms. Millenbach. Oh, this lag between video and in person is, I don't mean to be rude. Thank you so much for your attention to this child. And Your Honor, that's all I wanted to present today. Thank you.
Questions for Ms. Millenbach? Ms. Thomas?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Dumont?
Your Honor, just a few. Ms. Millenbach, you mentioned a dog cage that Xavier indicated something about that. Could you explain a little bit more?
All he has said is that he defecated in his pants, and then he used the word he's bad. Mm-hmm. Whenever he defecates, he always says he's bad. And then he says he was put in a dog cage. And I don't know. Yeah.
Are you aware if Ms. Denias had a dog at all or not?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. What I find with him is it's very hard for him. And this is very typical of young children. When they start talking about trauma and things that happen to them, they'll let it out. They might let out one sentence or even a partial sentence, and immediately they go into this freeze state where their brain literally shuts down in order to prevent having a major meltdown. A major is what they're calling it today, but it's really a major temper tantrum. And I don't want to push him over the edge by asking him what I can see. And before I finish this, I want to read something that happened just last Friday to you, a conversation he and I had, where I was so aware of, I don't want to put him over the edge, but you can't do that to a child. So you allow him to say as much as he wants to say. And then when he gets to the point where you could see it in his face that he's going to right away move into this temper tantrum, you don't want to put him in that tantrum. You want his brain to rewire itself so that he can use his words, that's what we're working on him with right now, using your words instead of having a temper tantrum. Talk to us about it.
You testified that it'd be highly detrimental for him to have any supervision visitations with his mother at this point. Is it of your opinion, once these reunification goals and things like that are put into place, that your opinion on that would change? Say Ms. Denias does anger management, substance abuse counseling, follows recommendation of her psychiatrist.
That in my mind would depend on the state that Xavier is in at that point. He is filled with fear. Well, imagine what that can be like for a 5-year-old child, fearful of your mother. He has no idea that he has a father. He hasn't even brought it up. He hasn't asked about his father. He will when he gets older. Mm-hmm. To me, at this point in time, I don't want to bring that even, he's still dealing with the fear he has of his own mother. I don't want to bring another person into that. And I think when I read you what I would like to read to you, our last conversation on Friday, it's there, it's in that.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Any redirect, Ms. Nice?
Your Honor, may I just have Ms. Millenbach finish that part about the conversation she had on Friday? I know we're limited on time, but it seems important.
Okay, we were in his bedroom. He wanted me to show his Ghostbusters toys, and he had some wonderful new signs and posters on the wall about, and he's into Ghostbusters right now, beyond all the other things he's into. And he was so excited because he wanted, throughout the whole time I was there, he wanted to show me those Ghostbuster things. And he brought out some of his little figures and things. So I let him do that, and we played in there a little bit with his characters, and we had them flying around the room. And he gets very involved in play. He's a very creative little boy. But I knew I wanted to ask him this question. And so I said to him, Xavier, can we put down the Ghostbusters, these little guys right now that we're playing with? I said, because you know what? There's something that I want to ask you. And it's just a question that I haven't been able to talk to you about yet. And he looked at me and he said, yes. I wrote this down after because I wanted to keep these exact words. And I said to him, do you miss your mother? And the demeanor on that little boy, his whole body changed. His face. He looks at me right in the eyes. Remember, he's very conversant. He's very social. He says, no. And I, trying to give it back to him and not put any words in his mouth, said, I'm trying to do a forensic interview, in other words, at this point. I said, you don't miss your mother. Then I said to him, can I ask you one more question? He said, yes. I said, would you like to see your mother? And his voice, and I thought at this point we're going into a tantrum, became this angry, vehement voice. No. And he immediately took his hands and he said, she hits me all over. And he started touching his face, his head, all over. She bit me. Here it is, showing me. So I said, okay. And I repeated what he said. Then he made an automatic shift and changed this thought because he knew where I was going with this. And he knew what I was going to say to him, which I really wasn't, because I saw him going into a tantrum. I didn't want him to go into this. I saw it happening, but just by looking at him and knowing him well enough, because I've seen it enough. His grandparents have seen it enough. Cody even recognizes it. Right, Cody? Huh? Back there. He sees it. Huh? He says to me, knowing that he knew where this was going, what my next question was going to be, even though he thought I was going to ask this, he says, everything here is good. Now, he was referring at that moment to living with his grandparents, the way it was, with just his grandparents and Cody, without his mother there. What does that mean? I've been playing with that since last Friday in my mind, that the idea, is it fear-based? Partially. And it has a lot to do with attachment. If we understand attachment, both the secure attachment that he has with his grandparents and the insecure attachment he has with his mother, there it is. So, I wasn't, I'm going concerned he's gonna have a tantrum yet, and I didn't want to start. But so I said, thank you for answering my questions, Xavier, and I assured him again, you're safe here, and what happened is not your fault. Which is so important for him to hear that over and over and over. And that's what we're hearing. That's where he is right now. For him to see his mother at this point, or even be introduced to the point, to the fact that his dad is asking about him, it's not the right time. He's not ready for it. I do not want to see anything happen to this child that would literally put him over the edge, to re-traumatize him, because that's what it would do.
Thank you, Ms. Millenbach.
He needs a long term of feeling safe and not being worried about being moved.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. That concludes my witness testimony.
Did you have any other questions?
No.
Thank you so much, Ms. Millenbach.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And please don't step out until we've concluded our hearing, so that if anybody wants a copy of your literature, they have a chance to ask for it. Okay. Hopefully it won't be too much longer. All right. Any other witnesses, Ms. Heiss?
No.
Very good, then. I look forward to closing comments, beginning with Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Judge. I think one of the primary issues for the court to determine today is essentially the revocation of parentage with Mr. Bliss, and making Mr. Donnelly the legal father, and perhaps advising him as to his ability to seek custody at this time, with the full understanding of Ms. Millenbach's testimony and what that might indicate to the child in this case. But we cannot infringe on individual rights here, and I want to make sure that we are at least giving the father the opportunity to proceed in establishing his rights, that he's entitled to becoming the biological father, and he has participated in these hearings. As it relates to the permanency goal for the child, given the paternity issue, I don't know that we can fully recommend adoption at this point in time. We are early on in the case. It's been 6 months. But given what we heard today through the trauma assessment, through the psychological evaluation, it does seem that this little one has experienced this complex trauma that would indicate his need for security and stability. We would like to see some progress on mom's part, but then we have to question, is it a reasonable likelihood that she can become a safe parent within a reasonable amount of time given the child's age? So at this point, we are, cautiously asking for a dual goal to continue for reunification and adoption, as there's a new parent here, but we'll take further instruction from the court on that point. Otherwise, we are asking for the court to continue to suspend parenting time for mom. Don't know that we had a really great update on the criminal case, but I don't know that those bond conditions have been modified to permit parenting time. And if they had, I think the reasonable likelihood of harm has been well articulated through the proofs today. And with that, we would ask for guidance as it relates to introducing Mr. Donnelly to the child, and what the court would expect from the agency to help facilitate on that point. Thank you.
Ms. Dumont, hopefully you are not regretting your decision to sit in here today, but look, we do really appreciate you being here on behalf of Ms. Denias, and thank you for listening, and I look forward to your comments.
Yes, Your Honor, I spoke with Ms. Denias. She is and has started parenting classes weekly every Thursday for 2 hours. She is in a process of finding a therapist that will take her insurance. She has 2 jobs. She's looking for stable housing. She indicated to me she is interested in supervised visitations if possible, and will do what she needs to do on her end to be able to do that. With regards to her criminal case, she indicated to me she starts probation April 19th, and she will comply with that and all the resources that they give her as well. With regards to the permanency goal, we would still ask for it to maintain reunification. We believe that there's a reasonable likelihood she will become a safe parent within a reasonable amount of time. And one last thing as well, she does have reliable transportation, proof of insurance, registration. I'll just speak with her more on getting all of the documents of everything she has completed through a caseworker.
Great. Do you have anything that would indicate that the bond conditions have changed in her criminal case? Do we know?
Not that we're aware of. I believe you were sentenced, right? Oh, my sentencing date is April 19th. Okay, her sentencing date is April 19th, so I don't believe the bond conditions have changed since her plea date.
All right, we'll ask our caseworker, Ms. Moore, to track down a copy of the Register of Actions with our next court report so that we can see what's been happening with Ms. Denise's case and specifically with attention to those bond conditions.
I do have one question on that. If it is, I don't know the proper word, so excuse me, but if the public can't access it anymore, would I still be able to access that? Because when I called court last time for an update, they would not give me an update on that hearing.
You could work with Ms. Thomas on some of those questions. I know a lot of our Register of Action questions can be answered by using the website, at least for district court. I'm not sure about circuit court, but.
Awesome, thank you.
Good luck. Did you have any other comments or any other issues to raise for the review today?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Ms. Heiss.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't have a closing. I need to tell you my recommendation on permanency would be termination. I hear the agency saying it's only been 6 months and that they want a dual goal. This child's been injured to the extent that we cannot rehabilitate him and his mother's relationship in a reasonable amount of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, the court finds all interested parties are given notice for purposes of today's review and permanency planning hearing. This is the 6-month point, which is generally speaking when I began looking at permanency on a case. I do find reasonable efforts towards a goal of reunification are being made, spearheaded by Ms. Moore. We heard about that during her testimony today, as well as the information contained in the court record now with regard to the report and the attachments themselves. I share in many of the concerns that Ms. Heiss articulated today, as well as the concerns that were articulated in the psychological evaluation and of course, the concerns that were shared by Ms. Millenbach today as far as the stability for this child and his needs right now. Those are certainly best met in the least restrictive environment, which is placement with his relatives. They are meeting his need for stability and safety and engaging in those difficult spaces around reiterating some of the work that needs to be done or echoing the work that's being done by Ms. Millenbach. And that's absolutely necessary for him at this point in time to move through what he's experienced in whatever way he's able to articulate that. So I do want to say thank you to Ms. Millenbach and to the placement for the hard work that we know you're doing with this child. Ms. Denise, I do want to recognize you have been doing some of the things on your case services plan. Please be dedicated in the next 3 months in showing us that you are willing and able to step into some of those hard spaces as well and do the work that needs to be done for you in order to be able to get to a point so that when your child is able to see you, that you're ready to see him as well in a healthy way. As of right now, I cannot lift the suspension of parenting time. There's been very persuasive evidence presented today that this little one needs that space in order to recover from his perception of his experiences. And that's happening in a productive way. And any visitation at this point would be, it sounds like still prohibited by your bond conditions, but also we just need to respect the space that he needs and secure against the re-traumatization that your presence may bring to him. And that's the difficult truth of where your son is right now. Thankfully, he'll continue to be monitored by our service providers, and you'll have the same opportunity to hopefully engage with some service providers to address some of the challenges and barriers that you've got ahead of you as well. I'm going to need you to really batten down the hatches on parenting education, your own mental health needs, substances treatment and understanding what all that means for yourself, regardless of what happens with your child. That is my segue into the conversation around the permanency planning goal. We do have obviously a new father to recognize legally today. That doesn't change where the visitation is at for him at this point, having not had that person introduced into his life, not really acknowledging that that's even a role for him right now. I think further supports that the introduction of Mr. Donnelly to the child at this point would be premature. I'll ask the department to work with Ms. Millenbach to get everybody in the room together to talk about what that looks like in the future, investigating Mr. Donnelly as to whether or not he's going to be able to meet the needs of this child, whether or not he has any concerns on his own, why he's been absent and hasn't been able to step up until today. I'm glad you're here, and we'll ask the department to do their due diligence in investigating Mr. Donnelly. We will issue in today's order the recognition that Mr. Jacob Bliss is not the legal father of this child, setting aside that affidavit of parentage and recognizing that Mr. Terry Donnelly certainly has that biological link, which he would like recognized as a legal link to his child. So that being said, we have some moving pieces still for this child, and hopefully those turn into supportive pieces. But with that in mind, the goal, I think I will grant the department's request to make it a dual goal, which is looking at adoption potentially for this family and the stability and permanence that this child needs, but also recognizing that Mr. Donnelly is new on the scene and that Ms. Denias would like her opportunity to take advantage of services and potentially able to make some headway now that her criminal case seems to have also resolved. So with all that in mind, we'll come back and look at permanency and review of the case again. We'll offer to you June 18th at 9:30 in the morning. We'll schedule a little bit of extra time, understanding that hopefully Ms. Millenbach will be able to rejoin us. Those updates on what's happening with her small client are imperative for this court to continue to look at whether or not that parenting time is potentially at risk of harming the child. And all of the updates I'm sure that Mr. Donnelly is going to provide and Ms. Denias by the time we get back in June. You will remain in that relative placement for all those reasons I've articulated today. And unless there's any questions, I'll see you all back here on this case June 18th at 9:30.